enough to determine that Patrick Mahomes, get this, could very well be the greatest player ever. Take a listen.
The crazy thing about Pat is I've never played against Pat. So I think his first year where he kind of like popped on the scene, I think I was sitting out. So I never played against Pat, but I've always watched him. I always thought he was like a great player. Then I came here, and then when I came here, that's when it like really hit me like, oh, like he might be the greatest player ever. Because the way he practiced, you know, how he goes about his business. People see the throws and things that happen that he does in the game and things that's kind of like, I don't know, there's like an accident, but it's not. He practices it so much. Like, I wish y'all could see the throws he do in practice. It'd be unbelievable. But yeah, my idea of like, I thought he was about, I don't know, a 10 before I came here. And now I think he's probably like a 12.
I'm not sure how the rankings go, but Brandon, let me start with you, Brandon. Are people rushing to crown Mahomes the next GOAT?
No, the interesting part of the question is the next GOAT. So I don't think they're rushing. Someone has to hold the crown. Someone has to carry the torch. I don't even think it's a debate. When you look at, the Super Bowl era and his first 53 games, you got to consider that, this is the guy that's going to be the one that dethroned Brady possibly down the road. But there's a lot to consider there. You talk about injuries. You talk about keeping the band together. You also got to think about Andy Reid and coaching. Is Andy Reid going to be around like Belichick was around for 20 years with Bill Belichick? So let's look at the Super Bowl era. Let's look at his first 53 games. We're looking at wins. We're looking at passing yards. We're looking at TDs. We're looking at passer rating. These are the things that he holds, the records that he holds. So, Nick, I would have to say that he is the one that's in line that's going to carry the torch. You may argue that, after this next Super Bowl, he is the greatest. I think it's going to take a lot of work, but when you look at his numbers and when you look at how his teammates rave about him, how the defensive coordinators around the league rave about him, how all the talking heads on TV rave about him, he is the guy.
Yeah, none of it's hype. It's all real, but also no one is arguing, nobody has argued that if the world stopped today, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback ever. Now, folks will be able to argue in 4.5 days after the Chiefs win the Super Bowl that unquestionably Patrick Mahomes has had the greatest start to a career in American team sports history after he wins the Super Bowl on Sunday. Now, I said that once before, and I left out the word American, and little did I know, we have a lot of viewers in Brazil, and Pele fans got very mad at me, so I did my research. I'm like, okay, Pele probably has it for worldwide. But for American team sports, he would have the greatest start ever. But talking about, could this guy, excuse me, pardon me, could this guy be the greatest in the history of his sport very early, Wilds, is not new. It's just new to football. Before Kareem Abdul-Jabbar changed his name, when he was still Lou Alcindor, in the spring of 1971, after his second year in the league, there were articles written that he's the greatest basketball player of all time. That was after he'd won a league MVP, a finals MVP, and a championship. Michael Jordan, before he played a single NBA game, here is what Bobby Knight said about him, and I quote, "I think he's the best athlete I've ever seen play basketball." He went on to say, quote, "He's the best basketball player I've ever seen," end quote. That was before the Bulls drafted him. So, and by about 1988, the consensus opinion surrounding Jordan was, oh, he's the most talented guy we've ever seen play the sport. He had 0 titles at the time. So it's not new to sports conversation. It's just new to a football conversation. So, Wilds, no, I don't think people are rushing, and I think Brandon laid out very well. Every single checkpoint, Mahomes has exceeded what the wildest expectations could be. When he wins on Sunday, he'll have his second ring before his 10th loss. He'll have his second ring before his first 2-score loss. And because of that, I do think that this conversation's legitimate.
I do too. And Brandon, I'm going to put you on a spot in a second. You know what I thought was the most interesting part about Le'Veon Bell's comments? Of how nonchalant he was. I feel like the best compliments are usually just kind of quiet. It's just like, oh, that's a good wine. And it's just like the most expensive wine in the world. We were in Bristol when Kyrie Irving came on when he was in Duke. He had just declared for the draft. And I talked to Jay Williams. And I was like, oh, man, this guy, remember he's hurt a lot. I was like, is this guy like the real deal? And he's like, oh, he's very good. It was like quiet, but like you know when a guy is going to be great. It's just quiet. So I'm going to put it on to you because Le'Veon Bell wasn't talking about game film. He was talking about watching him in practice and just the eye test like a Malcolm Gladwell blink. So Brandon, this is where I'm going to put you on the spot. Have you ever watched a guy outside of a game and have him exceed your expectations wildly just because you're up close and you're like, oh, I'm around greatness? Besides your boxing career when you look in the mirror?
I just got goosebumps thinking about my answer, and that's Odell Beckham Jr. So I went from the Jets to the Giants.
Wow.
And we were in the weight room, and we were doing pull-ups. It was the off-season, and, you know, you hear the hype about this guy. I played against him a few times in a regular season game and a preseason game. And I saw this guy do amazing things, and obviously we saw him on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. So you saw how awesome he was. And it wasn't until we were in the weight room and he was doing pull-ups, and he dropped to the floor and almost like into like the Spider-Man position. I said, oh my goodness, this is the craziest body control I've ever seen. And I said, he is the greatest athlete I've ever been around. And then you go on the practice field and his work ethic and how he does things just totally different than everyone else. This was a guy that was fighting for a contract, and he was acting like he wasn't working and doing anything. We went out and ran like 2100s, and he was chilling in the back for like 40 yards. And myself and Sterling Shepard, we're all in the front just running as hard as we could. And then all of a sudden you see Odell just pass us. And I said, man, this dude is a freak. He's a different type of athlete. So that's my answer.
And Brandon, so I think what's important for Mahomes is everyone acknowledges, the most ardent Brady fans acknowledge, Mahomes is a better raw athlete than Brady. But the quarterback position is very small part raw athleticism and large part everything else. Leadership, clutch, confidence, a toughness.
Yeah.
And where the reason Mahomes can be in this discussion is we've seen him on the sideline, down 24-0 in a playoff game, down 10 points in the fourth quarter of a Super Bowl, calling the play, instilling the confidence. We saw him carted off the field with seemingly a devastating knee injury and come back 3 weeks later. We have seen the things that make Brady the GOAT. Though we're never out of it, my team always believes we can win because of me. We've seen that already with Patrick. And that's why it's not just, well, he's big, he's strong, he's fast.
That's a great point.
It's not just that. It's also all the things, Jenna. Thank you. All the things that go into being a great quarterback. Right.
Do you make your team better?
Yeah.
Do you make your organization better? Look at Tom Brady in Tampa. Great point, Nick.
Yep.
As our colleague Eric Mangini always says, are you a true force multiplier on and off the field?
Oh, there we go.
Clear to see that Patrick Mahomes is. Yep, got that in there. Mangini. Al Bell may have Mahomes penned as the most important.
team sports history after he wins the Super Bowl on Sunday. Now, I said that once before, and I left out the word American, and little did I know, we have a lot of viewers in Brazil, and Pele fans got very mad at me, so I did my research. I'm like, okay, Pele probably has it for worldwide. But for American team sports, he would have the greatest start ever. But talking about, could this guy, excuse me, pardon me, could this guy